This episode of Fuel for the Soul is powered by ASICS. Head over to ASICS.com and sign up for a one ASICS account. It's completely free, and when you sign up, you'll receive 10% off your first purchase. You'll also gain access to exclusive colorways on ASICS.com, free standard shipping, special birthday month discounts, and more.
Hi, this is Thomas from Believe in the Run.
This is Megan with Believe in the Run.
And this is Megan with Featherstone Nutrition.
And this is Feathers, not Featherston, Megan's. What did you say? What was all that preamble?
I don't even know. But the best thing ever was when we were in Brooklyn and that one guy thought that I spelled my last name wrong because it wasn't Featherstone. I was like, yes, I'm still confusing people.
I know.
So good.
It is the stunning. That's what you should be. The stunning Megan Featherston.
Yeah.
The stunning feathers. The stun of the feather.
Yeah. I like that. All right. So you are listening to Fuel for the Soul, the podcast where we talk all things hydration and nutrition and how it affects performance, along with a lot of other nonsense. Sometimes we talk about things we're trying.
Like my patience right now with this.
Yeah. Thomas has very limited patience.
I'm fired up today, people.
But before we dive into a bunch of listener questions and a very hot topic, we have to talk about one of our sponsors, which is Cheribundi.
Yes, sweet tart. Yeah, I wouldn't call it sweet. It's tart cherries. And it helps with inflammation, right, Feathers?
Yeah, it sure does. It helps decrease muscle soreness when we are taking it while we are running, which is a lovely thing. I don't know about you guys, but we are going through so much of this right now because ever since you guys told me to throw it in the freezer, my kids now just like throw it in the freezer and then they cut the whole top off and just shove a spoon in and like eat it almost like a slushy.
Nice.
Oh yeah. So they're
kids
into that.
like it.
Oh, and then Sloan will just slurp these things. I mean, they're just like hanging out of her mouth. There's like they know where I store them and there's like random empty dud containers in my trash can. I'm like, the kids got into the cherry juice again.
at least they're throwing him out. My boys would just leave him around the house.
Yeah.
Oh, I yelled at him because I was like, this stuff stains. You got to put it in the trash can.
This is a funny thing. So I have been using it because he said that you should be using it, it builds up in your system. Mm-hmm. So I've been drinking at least one of the things a day, trying to mitigate the muscle soreness and all that stuff. And, so far it seems like it's doing something. And I had noticed, though, on my white running shoes, I kept getting a red dot, and I wasn't sure where it was coming from. And what was happening is after I finished drinking my pouch, I would just put my hand down kind of thing. And I was dripping on my shoe. But I was like, this is the second pair of white shoes that I have a red dot on. So it's not Cheribundi's fault. I just have to be more careful with the thing. But it was kind of funny because I couldn't figure it out at first.
Antioxidants in here are very dark pigments that are staining your white shoes.
All right, and if you guys want to get some of this lovely tart cherry juice, you can go to cheribundi.com and use the code FUEL, F-U-E-L, at checkout to save 20% off your purchase. Okay, the next sponsor we have to talk about real quick before the listener questions is Runway, RNWY. Another one of our favorite supplements, right? It's collagen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Runway, I know it hasn't been out long. We've talked about it a few times. A lot of you guys have tried it. It's a collagen supplement that has some other things in it as well to help just with our daily health. And they reformulated it because they were getting feedback if we're taking it before a run, don't we need more electrolytes before a run? So they amped up the electrolytes in it. So it used to have 157 milligrams of sodium, and now it has 375 milligrams of sodium. So I love this, right? As we're heading into the summer months, where, research shows if we take that 10 grams of collagen, like 45 minutes before our run, that's when we're going to get the best benefits to our tendons and our ligaments and helping rebuild cartilage and all these things. So now it also has more sodium in it. So a lot of people are like, how am I going to get my electrolytes and my coffee and my collagen? Like, that's too much fluid. I'm going to be peeing my pants. So now we've got the sodium with the collagen in one. So that's super helpful.
Hey, my question though, real quick for you though, is because we are like ingesting, like obviously people are on the train of hydrating well and getting all the sodium they need and all that stuff. But now we're getting more products with sodium. And I love my Element, and I get addicted to drinking that as well throughout the day, and that has 2,000 milligrams of sodium. So, like, do I need to maybe monitor if I'm taking Runway in the morning? Maybe don't chug 2,000 milligrams of sodium in the afternoon. Like, what how do I measure this out?
I think one element has 1,000, right? Milligrams of sodium. So if you're drinking one,
yeah, it's 1,000.
It's 1,000 in the can.
So if you're drinking one element per day plus the Runway, I mean, we'll have a podcast all about this. We're going to put a bunch more resources out about this because this is a huge question. People are like worried about over-sodiuming, but a lot of us are under-sodiuming, however we want to turn that into a verb. But sodium is a very confusing thing for a lot of people. So more to come on that. But in the meantime, most of us are losing at least 1,000 milligrams of sodium every hour when we run. Heavy sweaters are losing 2 to 3 times that amount. So if you think about it from that perspective, if you're running for an hour, taking 375 milligrams before and 1,000 after is not too much, So I think a lot of it's just going to depend on if you're a super sweaty human, I wouldn't worry so much about amping it up. If you're somebody who doesn't really sweat, you probably don't need to amp up your sodium, So it just kind of depends on that.
Yes, but I don't even think we said, so if you guys want to purchase some of the Runway collagen, you can go to rnwy.life and use the code feathers15 for 15% off your purchase.
Yep.
Is that feathers spelled the normal way, or is it like stun where we thought it was?
Just feathers,
just
like
feathers,
the bird kind.
15.
All right.
Mm-hmm. With an S. Sometimes I forget the S. You need the S.
If you were coming over to Ellis Island, I'd be like, ma'am, just drop the stun. Just be feathers.
I love it. I'm here for it. It's fine with me.
All right. We'll work on it.
Okay, I'm really excited about some of our hot topics we get to discuss today.
Keep saying hot topics, and I'm thinking them all.
Hot topic.
No.
Yeah.
This is about gels.
I'm gonna get a Skid Row T-shirt, maybe a Slipknot corn.
Oh, that store. Yeah. No, different topic. Yeah.
Feathers, did you ever wear like a leather studded thing or anything like that?
I had a couple leather jackets. None of them were studded.
All right.
Missed that
were they
opportunity.
Punk rock? Or like more like flight jackets?
I was never punk rock. Let's be honest.
Right.
Oh, wait. One more final thing before we get into it is we're going on tour again, but it's a little different this year. Still with ASICS. Not a hydration tour per se, but we will obviously be there and can chat all things hydration or whatever questions you have because Megan will be there. But our first stop is in New York City.
New York City?
Yeah. On June 13th. So we'll have more details to come. But if you're in the area, mark your calendars because there'll be 2 opportunities to see us. And I believe we're doing a Fuel for the Soul live. So there might be an opportunity for you guys to come. Yeah. To come.
Whoa, I am?
I wasn't sure. It was like Megan setting up the tour dates. And I'm like, last year it was pretty much the 2 of you guys, and I'm surprised. I think I'll be at 1 or 2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously Baltimore.
Yeah, so like maybe 3.
Maybe 3.
Yeah. So if you want to be at our inaugural live Fuel for the Soul show, which you guys know we answer listener questions, so you can imagine you can get your listener questions answered. If you come.
Are we soliciting in advance like what topic we might cover?
We're thinking it might even be more fun to just like throw them in a hat and draw them out and answer them off the cuff, Like that's kind of how we roll around here. Yeah.
Well, that's a good thing you have brains and like know stuff.
That's why we have Megan here so that she has all the knowledge already up here and
gotta stay sharp.
Put it up.
Answer it on the fly.
I can't wait.
Okay, yeah. So I'll share more details about that as we finalize everything, but mark your calendars for that date if you're in NYC. Okay, let's talk about, can we call it Applesauce Gate or
Springgate?
Applegate or Awesome Sauce? Yeah, Springgate.
Springgate.
Okay, Megan, talk to us about this situation.
Oh, so by the time this airs, I feel like most people would have heard about it. But right now, people are like, what? What's going on with Spring? So backing up, let's give some background. Spring Energy, right, makes gels They're one of the original people that made a quote unquote real food gel. So they were the ones who were kind of pushing like, we don't have an engineered gel. We have real food. If you look at their website, they actually have a quote on there that says, with good fuel, your body will perform with precision, strength, and relentlessness of the racing machine you are. So to be completely transparent.
Do they recommend a different site now?
Nothing has changed on their site yet. But I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like, I have clients who use Spring Gel, but they've never been one of my personal faves just because I don't love that they're trying to say they're superior because they're using quote unquote real food, because everything we consume is real food, right? So like some of their messaging has always kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but I have people who really like some of their products. It's an option. We can absolutely use their products. So that's kind of background on Spring. One of their most popular gels is called Awesomesauce. And I haven't tried it, but I'm told that it tastes almost like apple pie filling. Like it's kind of like a cinnamony, appley. I guess it's like people really enjoy. It tastes very real, not like a fake flavor like some of our, gels can taste like sometimes. So it's really popular. It also happens to have 45 grams of carbohydrates, or the label says that it has 180 calories and 45 grams of carbohydrates. So for like 2 months now, there's been this like buzzing going on that like, oh, it doesn't actually have the nutrition it says it does. It doesn't actually have it. So I've been watching these like underground Reddit threads of people talking about like, it's not right. It's never been right. They've been hiding it all along. But Reddit, it's like the dirty underground. So I was just kind of keeping abreast of it. But again, didn't have a ton of information, whether this was the truth or not, or what was actually happening here. So the next step was some people took this gel home and put it in a dehydrator. Like some people have like food dehydrators, right? So that will take the water out. So it would leave like the solid food product behind. And people were saying that the amount of food product left behind was only 18 grams, which is no way that could be 45 grams of carbohydrates. Like just from like a science standpoint, they're saying there's tons of water in this. So when you take the water out, there can't possibly be 180 calories in these gels. So then that started the ball rolling more. So just this week, we got information. There was a specific running coach in the ultra world that sent 8 gels to RL Food Testing Laboratory, which is what the FDA uses to calculate the calories in a food product. And what it does is it puts it in what's called a calorimeter, which basically burns the food. And the amount of heat it produces, right, is the energy, just like it would give our body. And what this study found, and you can pull the study, I've got it linked here. I don't know if we want to put it in show notes or anything. These gels that were supposed to have 180 calories and 45 grams of carbs had 76 calories and 18 grams of carbohydrate.
Okay, I have a couple questions right off the bat. Why was someone suspect of the Spring gels in the first place? Like, because I mean, you could test all. There's thousands of products out there,
right?
For calories. Why was somebody curious about Spring gels? And the second question I'll have is, I know that supplements aren't regulated, but if you're talking it's food and it's food in a packet, shouldn't it be under the FDA regulations to be regulated?
These are all fabulous questions, which we can take a stab at. So first and foremost, like, why did someone look into this? I guess part of me is like, why didn't you ever look into this, Megan? Because if you look at the actual weight of the product and you think about what type of nutrition products would be, it doesn't make any sense. Like, it's like, how could this possibly have this many grams of carbs in it, right? So I think that's probably where the ball got rolling. But then I've also heard of people that thought they were getting 90 grams of carbs an hour taking one of these every 30 minutes in a race, and they were bonking because they weren't getting 90 grams of carbs. So I think that also led to it, because that would be what, 38 grams of carbs an hour? No, 36 versus 90. Yeah. I mean, somebody who's really attuned to how their body feels with certain fuel is going to notice that pretty quickly. And then I guess somebody had one of those CGMs on, so they took one to see how much it changed their blood sugar. And it didn't change it like 45 grams of carbs should. So like there's all these people who are playing with it in the background before they actually took the approach of sending it to this lab that costs almost $1,000 to analyze these products, right? But they'd gotten to the point where they were like, we need to prove this. Yeah.
You said CGM. What does that stand
for? continuous glucose monitor. So it looks at what I did that. I like
Okay.
took a Morton and watched what it did to my blood sugar, right? So somebody did that with Awesome Sauce and saw that like it didn't really impact their blood sugar like 45 grams of carbs should have. So
I
that,
would've thought
they went
the
down this whole
CGM
rabbit hole.
was wrong.
Like, it can't be this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this brings up a lot of stuff. To your point, like the whole FDA thing. I actually have a former client that works for a big food brand very closely with the FDA because all their products obviously get approved by the FDA. So I was like picking her brain a little bit this morning about it. And she said it's really hard to know if an energy gel is actually being marketed or being, I don't want to say approved because it's not really approved, but if it's a food product, so the FDA is regulating it versus if it's a supplement product. It's really hard to tell, right? Like she said, sometimes you can tell by the label. I'm looking at these labels and I'm like, they all look the same to me, So
I don't understand why supplements can't be under the FDA at this point.
So if these were food products, the FDA regulatory body says that the nutrition label has to be within 20% of the actual nutrition. So in this case, there was a 40% error in these two things. So if it was FDA regulated, they would immediately be busted, right? But since it's a supplement, it's now kind of in this like limbo, if you will, for, all of that kind of stuff. But then this brings up like, okay, so if all of our energy gels are quote unquote supplements, like what's the discrepancy in some of these? Like, who do we trust? Like, what brands are actually, do you know what I mean? Like, honestly, for me as a sports dietitian, I'm like, holy crap, like this is like a big deal if this is like this off for other brands as well.
It's exactly what I said to Thomas this morning because I was like, when we were about to talk about this, I was like, wait, if this isn't regulated and this is considered a supplement, I was like, are the Mortons I'm taking, do they have 25 grams of carbs? Like I'm just trusting and assuming that that's all accurate, but
Same.
Now I'm like, who knows?
Same. And I have been. And luckily, my clients that have used Awesome Sauce, they never use it solely. It's always like rotated between like 2 or 3 gels.
Sure.
And it was just like a bonus. They'd take like 1 or 2 Awesome Sauces like a bonus. So like, I don't think any of my clients actually had like significant negative impacts from this because like I said, no one was solely fueling on Awesome Sauce, but anybody who was, which there was one runner, I'm blanking on her name, came out and said that she solely used this and like hit a wall, in a huge race for her, so that's a big deal, right?
Are the other spring energy gels are they like different? Because why is it just this flavor that we're talking about?
This is the only one they have that supposedly has 45 grams of carbs. But apparently they've also sent some of their other product. And by they, I mean not Spring Energy, but an outside party is also testing some of other gels from Spring to see if they all have this discrepancy or if it's just this one.
Yeah. What is the defining thing that takes something out of food and puts it into supplement category? Like what how do they define that?
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not an expert on this at all, but I would say, I mean, when you look up the FDA, there's certain like food products have to be under it. But then when this supplement comes in is where it's questionable. I guess the best thing I could equate this to is like energy drinks. So Celsius, Alani, I'm trying to think of the other popular ones right now. None of those are FDA regulated, but Red Bull is because Red Bull decided to put its product through the FDA instead of keeping it a supplement so that you always know when you're drinking Red Bull how much caffeine you're getting. Whereas these other energy drinks, we don't know. So I'm wondering if we're going to see that now kind of trickle into the energy gel. Like some companies are going to be like, listen, this is important to us. We're going to push this through the FDA versus other ones where you're just like, I hope it's right, but I can kind of equate it to the energy drink stuff right now.
I mean, I'm eating these peas and carrots right now from Trader Joe's, these candies. And I mean, literally they taste like the gummies that you would take for like a race.
Only the carrots do. The peas taste like trash.
And I'm guessing like the calories on this is pretty accurate and stuff. Here's a carrot. You want a carrot?
I just ate one.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. I like the peas. They're a little bitter, but nice. So something like this, there's not much difference between this and like a Cliff Block or any other gummy thing. This probably goes through the FDA because it's sold in grocery stores to people. Like, I don't understand how a supplement that has, especially if it's called applesauce made with real food,
Right.
how is it not regulated? Like,
Right.
I don't understand
No, I agree.
that piece of it.
I'm certainly not an expert on FDA stuff. I mean, literally, that's their entire job, and it's only like one pillar under the FDA regulations of food products. So, like, this is a huge thing, right? So, if somebody out there is listening that has more intel, we'd love to talk to you more. But I do think it raises the question of, like, is this working, right? Like, what's happening here in this industry? And I think, like, I don't want to scare people. If you're taking a Morton every 25, 30 minutes and it's working for you and you're not bonking, let's not overanalyze it, right? But if you're taking something and it's perhaps a smaller brand, things don't add up, you're not feeling like you should from taking a certain product, I think this is just a really good example that we need to listen to our bodies and notice that and change things and try different things, if we need to.
Do you think that it would be a good idea to just blanket that, like, gels and stuff? I mean, we're talking about sport where people are buying for a specific reason, for performance enhancement. So the number of calories, the number of carbs is very important as far as the selling point. It might be the most important thing. Like, first you need that, and then you need to find one that works with your gut and your system. Like, don't you think there should be some way to prove? I don't know if it's the FDA or if there's some independent testing or something that, like, I mean, I take the syrups, the Untapped. And I'm just guessing that it has this stuff in it. I just figured, okay, it's syrup. It's got to have a certain number of calories in it. But, like, I don't have, like, a definite knowledge other than what they write on the box.
Right. And you have to remember, with a lot of these things, they are smaller companies, so there's going to be some variation batch to batch. Like, it's possible that one batch is a little different in sodium or a little different in carbs, but it's going to be like a small percentage different. 40% different, that's not a batch variation right there. You know what I mean? And I think part of what is really just kind of sealed the deal for me on this brand in particular is they're not really coming forward and being like, shoot, like, we screwed up. They're literally they're showing an analysis that they did that says there's 38 grams of carbs, but they've whited out the date. You can't see, like, they're covering something up. They're not addressing this in a way that feels
I mean, are they
truthful.
open up to litigation? Like, is this one of those things where they sold the product? So. Maybe that's why they're defensive right now and not doing it. Because, I mean, think about it. If you're an athlete and you know how much it costs, especially, say, triathlon, you're spending $500, $600, $700 on an entry. You're probably spending, I don't know, a few $100.
Yeah, thousands of dollars at the end of the day.
For the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's just a very interesting concept here, right? Because, like we said, I mean, you guys, if you're listening to this, know how important we think it is to fuel adequately, to hit certain targets per hour for optimal performance. So thinking you're taking 90 grams of carbs an hour when you're really taking 36 is a huge difference, right? So
I mean, it also shows you how big marketing is. Like, if you have an athlete who's saying, I use this, and we know other supplements and fueling systems, we see athletes supporting it. I'm not going to call out names of one. And we also know that that's not entirely what they're using on the race day or fueling with on a regular basis, that sometimes it is a paycheck. And in that case, you have to really do your due diligence, not only trying to see if it works, but, you know, just because an Olympian or an Olympic hopeful is taking a supplement or, you know, drinking something, or, you know, even we've talked about the ketones before, you know, just because you know somebody who's having good performance and is putting that stuff in their feed doesn't necessarily mean that, one, they're actually using it, and two, that their performance is enhanced because of that product.
Before we move on to the next question, someone actually asked about, in relation to the Spring Energy debacle, they called it. They said, is there something like NSF or IS certified? Like, are there any gels out there that fall into that that they're like they could feel good about?
So that's a good question. I have actually seen like the Informed Choice for Sport on a few gels recently. Um, the NSF and the Informed Choice for Sport, they both look at, does this have anything that it shouldn't have that could potentially like trip a negative or a positive drug test, right? So that's the first thing they look at. But then they do also look at like potency and pure I can't speak. I'm just not going to say that word. Purity. Thank you. They look at that as well. So they're certainly not the FDA. They're not going to look and see, is there 20% of what it says on the label in here? But that's what they look at for supplements, right? For like, let's use omega-3, for example. If it says there's 1,800 milligrams of omega-3, if it's NSF certified, you know that there's like around that amount in there. So I would have to assume that for gels, they're doing some sort of testing to make sure that there's adequate carbs in there. But it brings up a good question because I don't know, is NSF, is Informed Choice doing that? Because in the past, it really hasn't been food products that stamp has been on. It's like a single supplement, right? Of collagen, of omega-3.
Vitamin D.
So, right. So I honestly don't know the answer to that. I would hope that it means that the amount is in there that it says it is, because that's what it is like for supplements. But I think, yeah, this gets a little dicey.
Are there,
and yeah, go ahead.
Are there any other brands that have claims when it comes to nutrition for running that you feel like, man, that might be too good to be true?
I mean, now I feel like I have to put my skeptical glasses on, but usually I try not to be skeptical, except if it's like in your face, like, come on, that makes no sense, which we've talked about some of those before. But as far as like gels go, I didn't have my guard up to any of that, honestly. I was just like, oh, it's why would, I'm very trusting, right? I'm like, oh, it has 45 grams, But to that point, I think it would be interesting to look at some of the gels that are more real food based, quote unquote, because it is harder to concentrate carbohydrates in real food form versus something like a gel that has maltodextrin in it. Like, it's very easy to concentrate that, right? So I think if someone wanted to be skeptical, I would foresee that there might be more variation in something that isn't quite as engineered as the gels with the sucrose, fructose, glucose, maltodextrin. I would expect those are probably more accurate. And now I'm not saying all real food gels are inaccurate, right? But I would say that the likelihood for it to be a little harder to concentrate that would be in those areas. But as we see, any brand, whether it's knowing or unknowingly, can be dishonest with it, regardless of what ingredients we're putting in something.
All right, that's enough talk on Spring Energy gels for now.
I do want to say, if somebody loves Spring Energy and they have a bunch of these at home, they're safe. You can use them. They just have 18 grams of carbs, just don't expect that they have 45 grams. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I don't want to say like people love these. The people who use them love them, and that's fine. Let's just use them for what we know they actually are versus what the label says.
Okay. Yes, let's really move on now. This next question was sent to Thomas.
That's weird.
In a DM, and then you sent it to us on a text message.
Oh, okay. I think they just were like, these ladies, you can get this question to them.
They said, hi. Yeah. Hi, guys. Love the podcast, Fuel for the Soul. I've been binge listening and learning so much. I haven't come across nutrition recommendations for people who are gluten-free. What fuel sources would you recommend that's equivalent to regular fueling without too much fiber? Thanks so much.
I get this question constantly. People are always reaching out like, oh, it's so hard. I'm gluten-free. Which I agree. When you're gluten-free, there's things that you relied on that you can't anymore. But we have so many options for carbs when it comes to gluten-free. I wanted to address it because I think I don't want anybody to think they're stuck and like, oh my gosh, I can't carb load. I can't eat enough carbs. I have to go gluten-free now. And I think that's immediately what people think when they have to switch to a gluten-free diet. So I thought we could talk about some of the carbs that people could be choosing, which are naturally gluten-free, like white rice, potatoes, fruit, right? Like bananas are super high in carbs. Fruit juice is a great way to get some extra carbs in. Literally, if you're like, okay, I don't like gluten-free bread. I don't want those alternatives at breakfast. Drink some apple juice, drink some orange juice with your protein, like and a banana. There's super easy ways to make sure that we're getting more. And then two, a lot of any product that we had before that had gluten, they make gluten-free now. Like gluten-free is such a fad right now that anybody who is celiac and has to eat gluten-free, I'm like, it's like a heyday for them these days because there's so many foods now that are gluten-free. There's some of my folks that I've done this for a long time. Sometimes I learn from them like what products are best. So a company named Char makes gluten-free bagels that have 61 grams of carbs in them, which is like wonderful. Because a lot of times when you buy gluten-free bread or bagels, they're really small. So like it'll be like 12 grams of carbs in a slice of toast, So finding like something like those bagels that have 61, it's, that's like a gold mine. So, finding some of those types of things and stocking them in the freezer if you're not eating them as quickly. I see Meg checking out the peas and carrots gummies. Those are gluten-free. Any type of fruit snacks or gummy candy.
You can eat this whole bag and get 75 grams of carbs.
There you go. Gluten-free.
It's a tiny bag.
That's carb loading right there.
But I also get a lot of people mad that I love graham crackers so much because there's really not an awesome gluten-free graham cracker alternative. Because yeah, they use a lot of fat in products to try to mimic. Like gluten makes things soft and pliable and tasty, so they try to use fat to kind of mimic that, but taking out, the pliability of the gluten that's in things. So gluten-free graham crackers are not awesome because they don't taste great and they're higher in fat, which is not what we want before a run because it slows down digestion. It can lead to stomach aches, things like that. So a lot of times I'll have people swap like the caramel or cinnamon apple rice cakes. They're almost equivalent. Like one caramel rice cake is like 11 grams of carbs. 1 graham cracker is 12 grams of carbs, right? So like just swap something like that. And I could probably eat a ton of those. Right? They're like air.
So Megan and I were talking, you mentioned fiber and in the gluten-free things. A lot of times you're saying, okay, they're including like more fat, more fiber. Megan just got, we're testing out a new supplement company and they sent her, as part of the thing, a thing of fiber. And Meg's like, I don't want this, it's before a run or something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's like take like 1 to 4 servings a day. And I'm like, if someone doesn't know, like they're going to take this before they go for a run and it's going to be a disaster.
Is it though? Like, that's my question. Like, is fiber necessarily equal taking a poop?
Oh God, this is such a loaded, like nuanced question. So fiber, there's 2 types of fiber. There's insoluble fiber that literally just pushes things straight through. Like if you put
like a cork
germ, right, which is insoluble fiber, it would lay on the top of water, right? Like it would not dissolve. Like that's insoluble fiber. That's going to move things through faster. And then there's soluble fiber, which if you poured into water would dissolve. That's probably what this supplement is, would be my guess. Yeah. Some people don't get enough soluble fiber in their diet. It comes from oats and beans, lentils, chia seeds, flax seeds. So it's not in a ton of things, but it is really good for us. It lowers our cholesterol. It actually slows things down so it helps bulk things up, slow things down. So I'm assuming that's why they sent it to you, is because some people like or think they need to supplement with soluble fiber to help with those things. I never recommend that for runners. Just because most of us eat plenty of those foods. Like what runner doesn't eat oats at some point in their day? Like most of us eat plenty of soluble fiber. Maybe you need some then, Thomas.
I didn't mean for us to go down this rabbit hole, but since you asked what it was, the ingredient just says oat bran.
Okay.
So I'm guessing that's just soluble fiber.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I actually like that that's oat bran so my only concern with runners taking soluble fiber is there's a lot of runners with like vague IBS complaints, right? A lot of people come to me like my stomach hurts. I feel bloated after I eat, or I am going too often when I'm running. So for some people, I would say probably a third of the population, when we add too much soluble fiber ferments in our GI tract. And so people who complain of like bloating, gas, abdominal distension, abdominal pain, I feel like I'm pregnant after I eat, those types of things, I would not want them to add a soluble fiber supplement because I think it would make that worse. But there are, like I said, 2/3 of the population that could benefit from it if they're not getting enough through their diet.
So you're saying in your gut, it's going to kind of get foamy?
Yeah. Think about we have all that bacteria in our small intestine, And we've all heard of like our microbiome, right? It's our like healthy gut bacteria in there. They eat things called prebiotics. A prebiotic is soluble fiber. So like the good bacteria in our GI tract is going to ferment those prebiotics, that soluble fiber. And that fermentation process creates gas, which for some people, they don't even notice it. For other people who have a little bit of IBS or have some stomach issues, feel bloated, they feel gassy, they feel pregnant is usually what I hear. Like their belly looks distended. So those are the people that I'd be like, let's not supplement with that. Yeah.
Okay, we totally derailed the last question about gluten-free, but I think we kind of answered, or you did, Megan, with that there's already tons of options, and now there's pretty much a gluten-free anything you want.
Yeah.
And rice cakes, caramel rice cakes.
Rice cakes. I will say, pro tip, any of my athletes who come to me who've had celiac for years, they almost solely pre-run fuel with cereal. Like the rice checks or like certain types of Cheerios, like they have their go-to cereal and they eat a big bowl of cereal before they run. So again, there's ways that we can find this and make this work. And it's just kind of finding what
I like cereal.
Right. Who doesn't?
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's get in one more question here. This is from Laura. She said, I love your podcast so much. I have a question about my marathon fueling. I ran my first marathon in September of 23 and my second in April of 24. During training for my first, I was advised by an RD to add protein during my marathon runs. Interesting. For when running over 2 hours, I've been eating Go macro bars during the run for all training runs over 12 miles, which usually is tolerated fine. I also eat goo gels. However, I could not stomach the bars during my first marathon. I thought nerves. While forcing myself to eat the bar during my second marathon, thought this was a good idea. I threw up shortly after. Should one add protein consumption to longer marathon runs? Is it just the bars that don't work for me, or should I stick to gels only? Thanks so much for your advice. I've never heard of adding protein mid-marathon run. Right? What is that?
I know. Like I was like, we've never talked about this. I'm glad that Laura asked this because there literally is science to this. And this, like, again, shows how much things have changed over the years as far as nutrition research goes. And this is why I love what we do here, because you guys' questions make me stay on top of the new nutrition research and really making sure that we stay sharp here and understand what's going on. So we actually can oxidize some amino acids. I mean, remember, protein is amino acids, so there's different types in there. So we can oxidize some of those when we're running, especially when we're out there for like over 4 hours, is what the research shows. So back in the day, when I first started training for a marathon, which was in early 2009, I still remember at that point in time, they were saying if you're running longer, you do need a little bit of protein because you can oxidize a little bit of protein. So I actually bought, I think it was a Hammer product, and it had a little bit of protein with an electrolyte drink, and you were supposed to carry that with you and drink that on your long runs. It was so disgusting. I couldn't drink it. Like, think about it. It's like a little bit of whey protein, like hanging out in your Gatorade. Yeah. Like, it was just
no thanks.
So I tried it once and I was like, this isn't going to work for me. I'm just going to like a normal thing. But at that point in time, and it was funny because I actually looked up that research study when Laura submitted this question, because I was like, who was that like even put this out there back there? And it was actually a 2004 research study, and his name was John Ivey. He's like super respected in like the sports science research space. And he had one particular study that he was claiming if we add protein to our carbohydrates during endurance activity, that we could increase our time to exhaustion by 21%. So this one study back in 2004, right, is what really led the product that I bought in 2009 that had some protein in it. So for a while we thought like, yeah, if we're running a marathon 3.5, 4.5, 5 hours, like if we have some protein, this might actually help. Right. So of course I was like, obviously you guys have never heard of this. We don't do this anymore. So like what, kind of transpired. So it turns out his research was like not the greatest. And that was a little bit inflated of like how much it could actually improve our performance. So when you really look, when we are exercising for prolonged periods, so 3, 4, 5+ hours, our body can use about 5% of our total energy burn from protein. I mean, that's so minimal, right? That's like a couple grams of protein an hour. So if you think about who's out there that long, it's Ironman athletes, it's ultra. they eat things that have some protein, right? Even like one of the Morton solid bars has a couple grams of protein in it, just by default. Some of the things that we're choosing at these aid stations at Ultras happen to have a little bit of protein. So all of that to say, my message to Laura is I don't think we need to intentionally be adding protein in to the marathon distance, right? And even people who are over the marathon distance, they're just kind of happening to get a little bit just because they're eating more real foods, as they're out there training. So, probably, I don't want to bash the dietitian who told her to do this. I think she was probably just operating on older research because it was there at one point in time that we should have some protein in there. And it's kind of funny because it's like, what are we going to look back in 10 years that we said to do that we're now like, just kidding, we're not supposed to do that, or that wasn't as good as it was, like
Shouldn't
it's always
all
changing.
that sodium.
Right? Like, shoot. No, I'm kidding. I'm sure there will be something, right? And I think that's why it's interesting to, keep on top of it and make sure.
What is crazy though is like Hammer used to have like a hold on the endurance and especially the ultra community. And I don't hear much from them now. I'm guessing they're still doing fine, but or do they not need to advertise as much because they have like that built-in like consumer that just keeps coming back?
I guess. And I looked it up and I do think it was Hammer Perpetuum that I was taking because I was like, what was that called? So I was looking it up.
I think
that's what it was. Did you? It was gross.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was I used to use the Recover Right. I used to use their daily essentials. Like I used to be a huge Hammer guy.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Laura, now, like, obviously, if you're throwing up in your race trying to eat a little bit of protein, that's negating any benefit that protein would have. So highly recommend for anyone out there in the marathon distance, let's stick with our carbs and then let's just make sure that we're slamming our recovery protein, right? Because that's another thing is they were like, oh, if we take some protein out there, is it easier to recover? Like maybe, but also we also can't be throwing up during our marathons. So just make sure we're getting our protein afterwards. If you're somebody listening and you're like, wait, I am a 5 or 6 hour marathoner. Do I need to be taking something? I think that's totally a personal preference. So I have some people I work with that are 6 hour marathoners that love to take a Cliff Bar halfway through because they feel like they need solid food. If that's the case, let's do it. But if you're somebody who's like, nope, I need to stick to gels, no harm, no foul, right? We're not training for 6 hours ever. Like that's one time that we're doing that for a race. Just make sure we recover well afterwards and it should be fine.
Okay. Let's wrap this one up here. Megan, just tell people a quick little what they should do about their spring energy gels if they have some and if they're gluten-free and are eating protein at the middle of their marathon.
So if we've fallen in love with Awesomesauce gels, they're safe, we think. Keep taking them, but they just don't contain 45 grams of carbs with, say, 18, maybe 20 tops. So treat them like a 20-gram carbohydrate gel instead of a 45 gram. And if you want to keep taking them, keep taking them. If you want to switch, let's switch it up. The other thing we want to remember, I think is a huge takeaway from this is if you thought you were getting 90 grams of carbs an hour, your gut has not been used to absorbing that. So we need to backtrack, right? We don't want to like go to another product that has 90 grams. Like our gut is not going to accept that immediately. So slowly work your way up to 90 grams if that's where you're trying to get to. And you thought you were there, just slow it down, find some new products and kind of get after that. As far as gluten-free goes, find some products, whether it's rice cakes, a gluten-free cereal, maybe check out the Shar's gluten-free bagels at 61 grams of carbs a pop, maybe the peas and carrots that Meg and Thomas have been munching on during this from Trader Joe's gummies, any of those types of things. But fine, being gluten-free doesn't mean we can't consume adequate carbs. That's definitely a myth. So just find what works for you. And then, I don't think we need protein out there, Laura. So if anybody else was feeling like they needed it, let's just save that for afterwards.
So succinct and lovely.
Boom.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening as always. And if you have a question that we haven't answered, you can email us at fuelforthesoulpodcast@gmail.com and we will answer it here on the show.
Also, let's sign a petition getting Feathers to knock the stun or stone off the end of her name and just be Meg Feathers.
You're going to start crossing off the stone and the stun everywhere you see it.
Yeah, I like it. All right, it's time for me to say peas and carrots. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye. So gentle. Goodbye.
Bye.
Now Meg's gonna cut this part out.
I can't say what I want to say.
Ooh, imagine goo packets of eggs.
Oh, jelly eggs.
Yeah. Yeah, Megan, why are you laughing at that?
Why are you laughing?
I still got a big hammer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will be cut. And you're like, my kids will never know my legacy.